Well, hey there. Thank you so much for coming back to my YouTube channel. Um, this is my second time within a week coming back to the channel to lay down some feed, I guess that's what you call it, or put a video up, or whatever the term is. I'm here. I'm here just to give you some more insight or give you something different that you can learn from. What I am going to do today is share with you something that I promised to do. Um, Actually, I promised to do it before the week was out, but I didn't make it. And I promised this with my group. In the last video, I ended by sharing with you that I was going to be working on the Lydia Project tote bag. All right. What is the Lydia Project tote bag? Well, actually, this is the Lydia Tote. It is for the Lydia Project. And the Lydia Project is an organization that supports women and girls coping with cancer. And I may have shared this in the last video, but I am a volunteer, also a spokesperson. I go out and speak on behalf of the Lydia Project to make the community aware, my community aware of what's available to those women and young girls that's coping with cancer. So I go out to churches, organizations. I even host a fundraiser each year on behalf of the Lydia Project, and hosted by So Much Talent, my group So Much Talent, and my business, Lydia House Designs. And it's been a lot of fun doing that. This is something new. Well, actually, it's not new. This is the fourth year. I've had a lot of fun with it. But this is how I actually started coming to how I started volunteering with the Lydia Project. Funny story, really quick story. How I found out about the Lydia Project itself is that I was, when my youngest son was a baby, and now he's like 19 years old, going on 20. But when he was a baby, I was actually looking for a business, a building to work out of for my business. And there was this cute little building that I saw was up the street from where I live. Uh, so I saw that somebody had already purchased the building. It had been vacant for a while. So I was nosy, curious, and wanted to know who had taken my building, you know. So I went in and found out that there was there were three ladies working in there. It was a little house, but they had these bags set up and all these different little things. And so of course I'm inquiring and asking about it and found out it was an organization. Hey, Auntie Carrie, thank you for coming over. So found out that it's an organization that supports women coping with cancer. And so it was just kind of meant for me to be there at that time because during that time, my mother-in-law was coping, had just been diagnosed with cervical cancer. And so when I went in, they allow you as a recipient to take one of these bags free of charge. And in each of the bags, they have a journal, pen, tissues, and lotions, and maybe something, like gum or candies or something, that you can chew on, and a card or a card that lets you know about the Lydia Project and all the services involved, and a prayer card that comes in the bag. And so I was able to take a bag home. I would ask, could I take one home for my mother-in-law? All I had to do was give the information, her information, how they could contact her, because of course they got to have proof, right? So I did that, but I also found out that volunteers actually make these tote bags. And these tote bags are, they're made by women in the community that volunteer their time and their services. You could take kits home, and these kits is just everything that's in this bag to make up the Lydia tote bag. So it comes with all of the components and the pieces to make this bag. And the kit is just nothing more than all of that placed inside a Ziploc bag. Okay, so you can take as many as you think you can make it within a month's time and return them. So I started that back in 2003. All right, so I've been volunteering off and on with the Lydia Project, doing these bags ever since. And there's so much more to the Lydia Project. I won't go into details, but if you would like to know more about the Lydia Project and how you can get involved, even though this is a organization that's founded in my city, I'm in Augusta, Georgia. So even though this is founded here locally, this is a ministry that reaches out all across the United States. Okay, so just about every doctor's facility, anybody or anything that has to do with cancer, anything cancer related, probably will have heard about the Lydia Project. But if you are a group, a women's group, a church, or a meetup group, or a 4-H club, or whatever, a women's club, whatever, if you're interested in your group finding a community charitable organization to support with your talent, this will be a good organization to support. And again, I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but that is the Lydia Project. And it may be backwards, so I do apologize. I'll have all this information in the link below, but it's the Lydia Project, and there is a 1-800 number, but you can go to thelydiaproject.org. All right, there's so much more that pertains to this outreach. But again, like I said, I've been involved since 2003 and I love it. I absolutely love it. My mother, thank God, she's a cancer survivor. And but that's not the story for many others. So we're here to support and to share our gifts and talents. And speaking of gifts and talents, this is one way that I give back to the community outside of donations and my time or whatever. This is what I do. So I am working on this right now because the So Much Talent group for this month's challenge is giving back to our communities of choice, our charities of choice. And so whatever that is, whether it's the Lydia Project you're sewing for, whether it's Project Liners, whether it's the Little Angel dresses, I think it is, or angel gowns, little dresses for Africa, whatever the organization is that you support through your gift and your talent, this is what we're doing this month of December inside the So Much Talent group. So this is our challenge this month. So with that being said, I am working on Lydia Project tote bags, and several of my So Much Talent buddies are working on these bags as well. And it's a lot of fun. They're very quick to make, very easy. They give you everything in the kit to use, and you also, if you decide that your group wants to take part in this, you can actually call the 1-800 number and ask for kits to be sent to you, and they'll be glad to send you these kits for your group to sew, and then you all just mail them back. But so yeah, but everything comes in it, including the instructions to make it. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how to make this step by step. It's very easy, but this is the result. And let me just add this one last thing. You see this right here, love. Um, the Lydia Project, each one of the tote bags, the Lydia totes, and I say Lydia tote because there are so many. There's some retail tote bags as well, and the retail tote bags are used to earn more funds to go back into the organization to support in the various other areas that are there. But these tote bags, all of the Lydia tote bags have three headings, either love, faith, or hope. Love, faith, or hope. That's what you're going to see. And they all have the purple handles. And the reason for the purple handles is because the Lydia Project is an organization that gives back to the community and supports those that can't support themselves at this time. And when I say can't support themselves, they need assistance from others or the support of others while they're going through this sickness or this illness. And so this is what the Lydia in the Bible did. Lydia was a maker of purple cloth, and she was I call her a philanthropist. She gave back and she supported her community through her purple cloth and her garments that she made. So this is why all of the bags, the Lydia bags, are called Lydia bags, and why they have purple handles. Okay. All right. So let's get started on making the Lydia tote bag. Inside this bag, in the kit, when you first get the kit, like I said, everything that's needed will be in the kit. And I happen to have taken this out already. So I'm just going to slide this over so you can see what I'm doing here. Okay, so everything comes in this little Ziploc bag, which is considered the kit. Um, and you'll have a checklist to so you can check off everything that's supposed to be in the bag. Now, if you happen to get a bag or a kit that doesn't have everything in it, or there might be something ill cut or whatever, there might be something that's not quite right, then you can bag it back up and return it back, ship it back. All right, so I've already gone through the task of checking off everything, making sure everything was here. But just to let you know what is supposed to be in the bag, and these packets are checked off by somebody who goes through and makes sure that they're there. And at the end, there's a special note that says thank you and God bless. So thank you to, hey, Saffron, thank you so much for coming over. You found me. These are some of my So Much Talent buddies that are over here. And you will probably know Endless Designs by her handle, Carrie Cunningham, my Auntie Carrie, by her handle, Endless Designs by Carrie. And you can check her website out and check her Facebook group out. So this is the Lydia pattern checklist. All right, it should have 2 bodies. All right, so we're just going to go down the list. And the bodies are the outsides of the bag. So you should have a back and a front. All right. So, and let me just tell you the thing about the fabrics. The fabrics are random because they're donated by textile companies, local textile companies. You welcome, Auntie Carrie. They're donated by local textile companies. In our area, we have Carol Fabrics. We have some of the designer home deck stores that sell fabrics. And they don't accept fabrics from the individual persons, the homemakers, because these women are dealing with a very sensitive illness. And so they have to be very careful about dyes and things like that that might be on the fabrics, or what people may have been around, maybe animals or smoke, or you don't know, so you have to be very careful. So there's a few people that their fabrics are donated from, but whatever comes to them, whatever comes to us, our organization, that's what we work with, and we pair it with other fabrics that will match up or come close or similar. So these bags are not meant to be matchy or perfect, but if I could say anything about these bags, they're kind of on the whimsical side, and very fun bags. All right, so this is just one stage of the process. After the bags, it's assembly production type work. This is one type of one part of the organization that you can volunteer for, and that's the production part, and that's the making of any of the bags. But the fabrics are brought in, they're separated and organized by colors. Then somebody comes in and separate the pair up the fabrics for making the bags. So they'll pair up fabrics to make the bodies, and then the linings and the pockets. And then somebody will come in and cut those pieces out. So we already have templates for the bodies, the linings, the headers, and then the pockets. So there's a team that comes in and cut all those pieces out and pair them together, and then put them in the little kit bags. Then we come in and we sew them up. The seamstress of the sewers, we come in and sew them up. My group, So Much Talent, our local group, goes in every second Saturday of each month to sew these bags up. We go in from 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we have a ball. We talk, we learn new tips, and we just get to share fellowship with each other, and just learn what we've been doing for the past month. And I get to meet new people. We get to train others on how to put these tote bags together. So we're growing, and it's a lot of fun. So that's how the fabrics come together. All right, so they're whimsical and lots of fun and different. All of them are different. Once we sew the tote bags up, then they go back into the production room, and they actually get little trims put on the pockets. Okay, so I don't have one with the trims on it so you can see that, but they get trims put on those. Once the trims are put on the bags, then the bags get stuffed. When I say stuffed, that gets all of the products that we're putting in the bag that I mentioned earlier: the journal, the pens, the tissues, the note from the Lydia Project, and the prayer card, and the name card. This is the what they call the made by card. So you get to put your name on here saying that this was made by you. And this actually says, "This Lydia Tote was made for you by the loving hands and caring heart of," and you put your name right there. All right. And then there's also the Lydia label that goes into the, it actually gets sewn into the bag. All right. So once that's done, then they are ready. They are ready to be given to the next referral. All right. So we're always looking for volunteers to sew these tote bags because on the average weekly, there can be as many as 100 women, just a little under, that are referred to the organization on a weekly basis. Yes, on a weekly basis. So we have to keep spitting these tote bags out. We have to keep sewing them up, keep sewing them up. So if you're interested, you can contact me, inbox me, message me, or leave a comment in the feed below, or you can contact the Lydia Project through the information that I'll share in this video in the description a little bit later. All right. So let's get back to the pattern checklist. So these were the two bodies, and then you have the two linings. Now, what you find, if you notice here, that the two bodies are shorter, they're not as tall as the lining pieces. That's because the bodies have these headers that are sewn on. Okay, so once they're sewn on, then they'll meet. All of the seams for sewing this bag is a half an inch, not your standard 5/8 of an inch. Half an inch all the way through. Okay. All right, so I'll put that aside. That's in there. I can check that off. The two handles are in here. We'll check this off. The made by label, made by card, the Lydia label, um, the two tops. Yeah, these are the two tops. And then the one pocket. The pocket and the tops, the headers normally match. Okay, so that's the pocket. And then let's see, they have the two tops and then one monogram, and that just want to make sure that the top is monogrammed, and it is. So this particular one has faith. All right, so that's a cute little pattern, I think. Don't you? I think that's a very cute pattern. All right, so I am not going by the instructions, but because I've done it so many times, so I already know, how to put the bag together. But I'm just going to walk you through it, and on the norm, I usually work one tip that will give you, let me get my legs up under here. It is cute, right? One tip that I will give you, and this might make some cringe, but I'm always thinking of ways to do things faster because we can make several bags at one time, at one sitting. Like some of us, I have a bag full of these. I think I have about 12 more of these kits in here, um, in this bag. They come just like this. So, and they're different colors, various colors. And what they suggest in the instruction sheet is that you actually match up your thread with your fabric. All right. So if you're working on production like me, if you're trying to spit those bags out, it's a time. It's not a time waster, but it you utilize a lot of time. Let me say it that way. You utilize a lot of time by switching out the threads. So what I've done, and it has worked really well, put my headphones here. It's worked really well. Is I actually use a monofilament thread. I use a monofilament thread, and I actually stand it behind my machine with this thread cone holder. Now you can actually get this in a smaller spool size, and it's usually over in like the sulky section, the embroidery thread section. But many ask, well, is that strong enough to hold up? Yes, it's strong enough to hold up. It is strong enough to hold up. We have not had any problems. As a matter of fact, once you iron this and press this, it kind of heat sets. And so, yes, it's very secure. But the beauty of it is there's pros and cons to this, but the pros outweigh the cons. All right. So the pros to this is that you don't have to keep changing your thread. You can use this both on your bobbin and your on your top thread or your upper looper thread. So you don't have to change your threads. You can just keep sewing and keep going, and this works for every color fabric very well. So the only thing you'd have to do with this, because this monofilament thread is wiry, it's curly, not wiry, it's curly. So it tends to, after you sew for a while, to curl on itself, and it tends to jump out of the thread guides. So it is best to get a thread sock and put over the spool, which will help control the flow of the thread and keep it in alignment. So this works really well. And you can purchase this thread socks at, I purchased mine through wawak.com. And it actually comes in a long piece, and you can just cut it off to the amount that you need. So actually you can get about 3 of these socks for this size spool out of one purchase. Okay. And I think it was like maybe $3 and something for that. But anyway, that's my tip. Now, when you want to go ahead and have everything set up, I obviously have my ironing board, my tabletop ironing board and iron right beside me. Now, most times I don't iron as I'm doing these bags because the home deck fabrics are has memory. And when I say it has memory, I do a lot of finger pressing. So I can press with my fingers and get a nice crisp so it can hold and stay in place while I'm sewing. And then I'll go back in after the fact and I'll go ahead and do a press over the overall bag. Okay. So, but you do, I keep my machine, I keep my iron and ironing board here beside me anyway, because I will need to press and fold the straps, and I'll show you how to do those. As a matter of fact, we may do those first. But you do want to make sure your machine is working well. I keep my stitch on about a 3. You don't want it too small of a stitch, and you don't want too long of a stitch. So I think 2.5, 3 on your machine is good. All we're doing is straight stitching. No other type stitching is involved. Straight stitching all the way. Okay. You want to make sure you have maybe a size 12, size 14 needle. You are going to need a hemming gauge or a marker, or a ruler, seam gauge or marker, and so you can make sure you mark, because and I'll show you why, because your straps on your bag have to be set in a certain position, and your pocket on your on the bag has to be set in a certain position below the seam, and your label has to be set in a certain position. So all this is on the instruction sheet. You want to make sure that you have some pens. Keep you some pens. You want to make sure you have a chalk marker or a pen, something that's easily erasable, or something that can disappear and won't come back. Because once these are sewn up, they're not going to be washed or treated or anything like that. So you want to make sure there are no visible marks on the bag. All right. Definitely have your good pair of scissors. Okay. And you also want to make sure you have a seam ripper on handy, which I think I don't, but I have my old handy dandy. But many of you know that my favorite tool to work with outside of the seam ripper is a good old fashioned raised blade. That's my seam release, I guess, of choice. All right. I think my Wi-Fi kicked me out. All right, so what I'm going to do here really quick before I fold this on there, I'm going to test my stitch out real quick because I think it's stitching different. Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's get this back in here. Okay, good. All right. For some reason, it was stitching a little zigzag there, and that's not what I need. Okay. All right. All right, so always remember, when you are releasing your threads and cutting them, always leave you some tails hanging from behind the machine, because when you get ready to start sewing, you don't want that thread to jump out of the needle. That wastes time also. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do here, I like to go ahead and get everything out of the way that I need to press as much as I possibly can. All right, so what I'm doing here, and if you're doing like 4 or 5 bags in one sitting, those are very nice. I love sewing tote bags. I know they are, and they're quick. You can actually, I counted this. I think 6 in one sitting. And what I did was I was able to go ahead and press all of my straps. And you'll see how I'm doing this. The straps are flat. They come like this, but then I finger press them in half like this, lengthwise. And by me pressing it, finger pressing it, you can see it has the line in it, that crease. So I'll go ahead and bring one edge of the crease, one edge, and fold it into the crease. And this is hot dog style. Okay, and I'll do the same on the other side. I'll bring that other edge into that center crease, and I create me a little crease as I'm folding that. You'll find many times I don't use pins because, again, that's another um, time waster. I mean, it just, that utilizes a lot of time. But if I can go ahead and finger press it, get everything situated, and then go ahead and press it with the iron, then I had no need for pins. Okay, so now it's ready to be stitched. I'll just lay that to the side, and I'll do the next one the same way. So if I'm doing multiple bags at one time, I'll go ahead and get all the straps done. Now, when we are working on site, when we come together every second Saturday, there's usually a lady there. Melon, I don't know Melon that's on here tonight, but Melon is in the group as well, and she's a Lydia Project volunteer. She will sew all the straps for us. Oh, she'll sew all the straps for us. Hey, those are very nice. I look okay. Yeah, she'll sew the straps for us, and we had a lady that was ironing and pressing all the straps into shape. So all we had to do was, if we had straps that were unsewn or unfolded, we just traded ours in for some that were already done. That helps save us time too. Okay, so that means that we didn't have to take time to sew these up. We can just go ahead and grab some that were already sewn, and we just put them on. So it's a big advantage to being there. Um, it's a big advantage to going ahead and prepping everything that you need. Now I'm going to go ahead and um, well, I won't press this. We'll do this last. This is the pocket. And so we have a unique way of doing that. All right. And generally, when we come together on Saturdays, that second Saturday of each month, we always seem to learn some kind of new tip. It's a lot of fun. Get to talk and learn about each other. Now, when you're sewing this strap, I'm doing the strap first, and again, I'm using a size 3. I'm edge stitching this strap, okay? Not back stitching because I don't have to, and I'll show you why later. And you want to make sure that you sew this as even as possible. See what I did there? Just kind of pivoted, so I wouldn't have to waste a whole lot of time taking it out, flipping threads, putting it back in, and then sewing again. Just keep it moving. I'm about to knock my label off. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this one on and stitch it. You do want to make sure that you still sew these very professionally, even just because they're not being sold. We still have to make sure that they're sewing the very best possible. So these bags do get checked once they're finished. Once they go through the sewing process, before the trims are added on there, somebody will go in and make sure that the bags are sewn correctly. They're not crooked. The seams are straight, and everything looks good. It's quality. All right. So now what I'm going to do is sew the pocket. Now, when I sew the pocket, I am just going to sew both sides, and then I'm going to sew across the bottom, but I'm going to leave maybe like a 2-inch opening so that I can flip this inside and out. Okay, inside out. All right, so this gets a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now, when you sew this, I always encourage people, especially when I get ready to put the bag on, to make sure you sew from the top to the bottom. Okay, in this case, this is from the bottom to the top. All right, 1/2 inch seam allowance. I had to forget, I have to utilize my thread cutter. That helps too. When you use your thread cutter, you have to stop and keep using your scissors. But you definitely want to make sure that you that your threads are way behind the machine, because you don't want to make that mistake of pulling your threads out. All right, so let's go back and let's do this end. Back stitch over that corner right there. Okay. Now I'm doing this working on my very basic Kenmore machine. So this can be done on a very basic machine. You don't have to have a fancy machine just to sew these tote bags. Okay. All right, so go ahead and clip that. All right. Oh, the other thing that I forgot to mention is that you do want to make sure you have a point turn, okay? Because you're going to be turning these points over here, these corners. So you want to make sure you have a point turn. And I had mine up here, but I'm going to use, I'm going to show you another little trick that we learned. But I can either use that, the corner of that, or I'm going to use my good old faithful right here. Don't tell nobody Miss Lydia told y'all to do that. All right. I don't know if my little man's been on my sewing machine table. I haven't used them on a filament thread to make them yet. Yes. What stitch length? I'm using a 3. Yeah, try it because it really makes a difference. Especially if you're doing a lot. You want to consume time. I mean, you don't want to consume a whole lot of time. You it's a time saver to not have to keep changing thread. All right, I should have checked for my point turner while I was gone, but I think, well, I'm not going to look for it. So that's a fine little point right there. It's good for what you need to use it for. I'm going to use this on the bottom, and then I'm going to show you the other piece that I had, the all-in-one. Probably didn't know it could be used for a point turner, did you? Okay. You want to make sure that those corners are out there. Okay. All right. Now let's try this on the other ones. Hey, Mo. You see what I'm doing, girl? All right, so see, that came out pretty good. That actually worked better than the screwdriver did. All right, see that clean point that came out on both of those ends as opposed to that point right there. So let's go back in and point that out a little bit. So if you haven't used this for a point turner, go back in and try it. Okay. Now what I didn't do, and that might make the difference, is I didn't trim I don't think I trimmed the corners at the top or the bottom, one or two, but anyway. All right, so once you get that turn, you notice there's still an opening right there, okay? I have made mine. You got yours to finish too? Yeah. So you know this is my project for the month, Mo. All right, so that little opening is still there. We're not going to do anything with that. All right, but I am going to go ahead and press this, okay? And I must have had something on my arm. Okay. All right, well, that's going to go on the inside of the bag. So, more advice. Make sure you have 5 to finish, Auntie Carrie. Yes. I know I'm not going to get all 12 of these finished. I usually carry them over to the next month, or, you know, just check them back in as I get them. All right, so, all right, so here we go. All right, so there we go. Now there's the opening right there. So what I'm going to do, I'm leaving that open. This is another time saver. You have to go in and try to close that up, because once I pin this pocket onto the surface of the bag, I'm going to have to edge stitch this pocket onto the bag. So that'll take care of that. That'll kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. I don't know why you want to kill two birds with one stone, but hey, Miss Natalie, how art thou? All right, so the next thing I like to do is to go ahead and I'm gonna put my handles aside, and I like to go ahead and sew my toppers onto the bodies. So I want to make sure that I lay my topper on right, so that I'm not placing this header upside down. So I'm gonna go ahead and lay it like this. That's right side up. So I'll just flip that down like that. So I'll make sure I get that on there right, because I have sewn it on upside down before. All right, and so then we'll go ahead and lay this down to the other side. All right, so I'm going to put the back part aside, and if you feel like you need to pin this in place, then by all means go ahead and pin it in place. But at this point, you do want to make sure that you have the right side together, okay, because sometimes these are cut too big. Sometimes they're cut, you have too much fabric left over. So go ahead and double check. I'm going to go ahead and pin it and make sure that you have the right side. Make sure you haven't turned it over. Make sure you have the right side, because if you stitch this on, you may, if it's on the wrong side, it could come out too long. So you want to make sure that it's right. So I'm going to do that by go ahead and pinning as if I pinned a 1/2 inch. Seam allowance. I'm just going to do it on the ends, and I'm going to flip this up like this, and then I'm going to lay it up against the lining. Okay, well, I think that matches, so I think I got the right side. All right, so what I have found is that this topper or header is just a little bit longer, wider than the bottom, than the body itself. So either I can ease that in, or I need to find the center of this topper and find the center of the bag. Now if it's too off, or if the header is crooked or anything like that, then you can just put it back in the bag, count it as a ill-cut bag, and send it back. But you want to make a note on the checklist what you found. So notice right here, I clipped the center of that because I want to match it up with the center of the bag. So I don't want to like line this up on the edge, and then when I get to the end right here, I've got all of that off on the end, because what's going to happen is the faith is not going to be centered on the bag. So I want to make sure I line up the center with the center. Center with the center. All right, so I'm just taking a little clip mark, just clipping it in a diagonal, just clipping a little wedge out, a little notch out. Okay, so again, making sure I'm laying that in the right position. I'm just going to put a pin right at the center, and then I'll start sewing my 1/2 inch from there. All right, so make sure that's taut enough. Okay, 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I'm using a number 3. Let's just move that pocket to the side. Okay, go ahead and take that pin out and go the rest of the way. Here's the other thing that you want to be careful for. You want to make sure and watch out for the fact that the wording is not too far down in the seam. because you do not want to stitch over that wording. You want at least a half an inch, about a half an inch clearance from the seam. You don't want to be too far down in there, and you don't want that wording to be too far over the edge. You don't want to have to fold that in. You don't want that to look like that. So if they've embroidered that too far up to the edge or too far down into the seam, you want to put it in the bag and send it back. Okay. Now here is where you want to, most people will press this seam open. Again, if I can finger press it, I do. That saves me time from having to get up and go press. But if you have the iron in front of you, then it's okay. Go ahead and press it. Okay? Because just as much, it's just as easy to go ahead and take that iron and press it as it is to finger press it if you have the iron by you. But if you're having to get up and walk back and forth to the ironing board, go ahead and try to finger press it if you can. Okay? Alright, so let's go ahead and do this mini iron next to the, you keep the mini iron, that's a good idea. And that's one of the things I do not own, Auntie Carrie. But you do a lot of quilting type stuff, don't you? I do not own a mini iron. That's a shame. But I haven't had a need for it, I guess. Alright, so I just clipped the little notches in there like I did the last time. And so I am going to put my pin there in the center again so I can make sure I'm matching those up. Okay. And I'm going to go back over here and stitch this up again. Now, Monique and Auntie Carrie are on here, and they both are Lydia Project volunteers, and they sew these tote bags as well. So it's always fun. A lot of times when I'm at the Lydia Project, I'll do a live, Facebook Live from the Lydia Project, and Monique a lot of times will be sewing her tote bags right along with us. And she's not even in, well, she's still in the state, but not in the city. Yeah, so it doesn't matter what part of the United States that you're in. If you're interested in volunteering to sew these tote bags, you and your group, if this is something that you think that your group or organization would like to do to give back to your community, to the locals in your community, or to support the Lydia Project, then by all means, please inbox or call the Lydia Project and let them know that you're interested. Now, this is what I have done several times. I have done this many, many times. Forgot to put the pocket on. So before you sandwich these together, because it's so easy to want to do that first, go ahead. Auntie Carrie says, not so much for quilting. I initially bought it for stuff I make on my embroidery machine. Oh, I find myself using it for small part. Yeah, okay. All right, so that makes sense. So here's where your seam gauge comes in at. Right below this, you want to mark from the center 1.5 inches down from the seam in the front. It has to be centered and it has to be on the seam. So what I do to get my center, I go ahead again and I finger press. I finger press this to make sure that I have the center. Okay, because most home deck fabrics will allow you to do this. It will leave an impression. So I don't know if you can see that. I have that center line, so that helps me. Okay. I don't know if that did anything, but that's somebody calling in. All right, so I got my center line. So now all I need to do is mark for my 1.5 inch down from the seam. So this is where your chalk mark comes in at. Okay. And you want to use something that's not so obvious. So I'm using my white chalk mark to mark it. Okay. I'm going to turn it this way. Okay. So I don't know if you can see that, but I'm marking from my pen. Draw pin. All right, so I can faintly see it. You can't see it, but I can faintly see it. That is 1.5 inches down from that seam. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is take my pocket and I'm going to mark. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get me a center crease by folding it. Okay, get me a little groove right in there. So can you see that? So I got me a little center mark, and I'm going to place that flat edge along the markings that I just created. Okay, I'm going to line it up in the center. Now remember to place the opening of the pocket at the bottom. So that fold line, remember we folded the pocket over? That fold line is the top edge of the pocket. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and that line is so faint I have to make sure I can see it good. Because you don't want the pocket to be crooked. Okay, so this is where if I pin anything, I make sure that I take my time and pin this. I pin it because you don't want the pocket to shift. Okay, and this is where you definitely want to make sure. I'll go back and double check and make sure this is lined up right. Okay, so I'll go ahead and pin this really good. I go ahead, especially I start at the top. I pin the top in place. Okay, so it looks pretty even, right? Okay, so then I go ahead and pin even more. I'm still using my pins from the last project. Okay, now this fabric seems to be a little stretched out of shape. That's one thing that you want to be mindful of too, that your fabric is not stretched out of shape. You want to make sure it's as even as possible. Okay, so I'm going to put a pin right there at the middle part on both sides. Okay, I'll put a pin down at the center, at the bottom. Put a pin down at the bottom in the corner. Now, if you're good like that and you don't have to, then more power to you. But me, I know how fabric shifts, especially when you're trying to make it perfect. It'll shift on you in a minute. So this is what it looked like when I finished pinning. So it won't shift. I'll make sure the corners are secure, the center is secure, and I'll make sure the corners down here are secure and the center here is secure. Y'all remove the pins when I have to. So when you sew the pocket on, start from the top and go down to the bottom, and then start from the top over here and go down to the bottom. Never go down, go across, and go back up, because it will always tend to shift. And when you get up here, if you do that, you'll find that this part is shifted up. Your fabric, your machine always tends to move the top layer ahead of the bottom layer, so you don't want that to happen. So make sure that you are stitching from top to bottom on both sides. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm edge stitching the pocket, and you want to go ahead and put your needle down in the pocket before you start sewing. And I'm going ahead and double back stitching, kind of double tacking that in place. What I'm also doing is being mindful to watch that the fabric isn't moving so much. Like I said, the top fabric tends to feed or push ahead. And so I want to make sure that it's staying in place, and making sure that it doesn't slip out of place where it's supposed to be, thereby making the fabric shift. You don't want the fabric to shift. Okay, so when I get down here at the corner, I'm also double back stitching. Okay. So here it is. I'm getting down here at the bottom of the pocket where that opening was. See, that was shifting up. Okay, so because that opening is down there, now that I'm top stitching, taking care of that all in one step. Okay, so now what I'm doing is going ahead and releasing this, and I am going to start from the top and work my way down to the bottom. Okay, I'm going to edge stitch this. Go ahead and put my needle down. Now I like to really backstitch at the top of the pockets, because when you put your hand in the pockets reaching for stuff, putting stuff down there, you want to make sure that that pocket is secure and it doesn't pull away over time. You can do that either by back stitching it a few times, or you can tighten your stitches up. You can make your stitches smaller. Let's see how well I do. Now be sure to clip your threads good. Okay, there we go. All right, see, we got that pocket on there good. All right, so pocket is good and secure. Now, what I like to do is go ahead and mark my, well, actually, let's go ahead and stitch these up. Okay, now I'm gonna give you a tip here. I need the color combination always so pretty. I know, right? They are. I love how they put the fabrics together, pair them together. All right, I think I keep getting kicked off. All right, so what we're going to do now is match up the seams. You want to make sure that you match these seams perfectly, okay? So my trick for that is taking a pin, taking a straight pin and going in one side of the seam allowance. I don't know if you can see that. Going into the seam allowance on one side and making sure I come out through the seam allowance on this side. I don't know if you can see that. It's hard to see. And then I'll go back into the seam allowance. Let me bring it over a little bit. I'll go back into the seam allowance on this side and come out of the seam allowance on this side. Okay. So if you can see that, my light is in the way. You see that right in there? So make sure I go into that seam allowance. So it allows me to make sure that that seam is in there straight. Okay. Because again, you want to sew this right. You want to make sure that this is sewn and it looks neat. It looks good. Just because it's given away, just because it's free, we still want it to have the same quality and care as if it was being sold. Okay, we'll go back and make sure that this one's good. I think that one's off just a little. Okay. All right, so now what I want to do is go now and sew this all the way down both sides and across the bottom, completely across the bottom. Okay. Now what I'm going to do right here, remember one side was off a little bit. Can you see it off just a little? I'm going to go ahead and true that up. I'm just going to trim that excess off a little bit. Now you can lay this down on your table to make sure that you get it right, or just good like that. Some of y'all are. Go ahead and just trim it off. Just eye that and trim it off. Okay. And this one was off by a lot. So you might want to take your tape measure and actually only one side was off a little. All right, so I just even that back up. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead. Remember, 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay. And you do want to make sure that your seam allowances are laying flat down and don't flip up. Okay. What I do is once I get attached to part of the seam, I go ahead and take the pin out because I know that seam is going to stay in place now. All right, if you're not pinning, go ahead and make sure that your sides are straight. So match it up. Across that corner. And again, I'm starting from the top to the bottom because you want to make sure that this lines up just right. Okay, now I just did what I told you all not to do, and I let my thread slip away, and I can't see it because it's clear. So I'll go ahead and thread this back. And I had too much of it, so put that down. There we go. There we go. Now we're back in business. All right, got that seam secured. Let's go ahead and finish. Now this is the part that we get a lot of questions about, mitering the corners. This is the part that you come to. Now I will say this, you do have to press your seams open. All right, so again, this is where I finger press my seams if I can. Otherwise, I'll go in and I'll go ahead and press these open with the iron. Okay, so there's that seam right there. Can you see that? That came out really nice and neat. Okay, let's see how we did with the other side. So there we go. That seam came out perfect. Okay, and that's what you want. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm gonna, since my iron is here, I'm gonna go ahead and use my iron to press this. If you have a, I don't have my tabletop standing up, so I'm just gonna press this down flat. Press that down so you can get down in there. Just want to press those seams open. See if the threads that's standing in the way. For people, for me, for a person that sews, I cannot stand threads, strings. I cannot stand strings, y'all. Seem like they follow me everywhere. Like, oh my God, get away from me, strings. Now this is where you want to have like your seam roll or whatnot. This will help with this. But again, if you're like me and you don't like pressing, and just press this open. Okay. All right, so now this is the part that's tricky that a lot of people ask about, okay, and that's mitering the corner. So this is the part where you come to where you have to stitch 1.5 inches from the point in to get that mitered corner. And so to get that miter corner, you're bringing the bottom seam and the side seams together. Okay, you're making sure that the bottom seam and the side seam line up. So you're going to take that point, where the bottom and the sides intersected. You're going to take that intersection, that point, and you're going to do what I did with the seam right here. You're going to make sure that the seams line up. Okay, so what I do to make sure the seams line up is I do the same thing. I take my pen and I go through the seam on this side and make sure it comes out to the seam on this side. Okay, then I want to make sure that it goes back into the seam on this side and come out through the seam on this side. If it doesn't come out through the seam on this side, they're not lined up. So I have to do it until they lined up. Okay. There we go. All right. So see, you see that lined up right there? That is lined up, and it's lined up on this side. Okay. So now we're going to do that on both sides, and then we're going to measure in 1.5 inches. Okay. So you see there's a theme, a 1/2 inch seam allowance and a 1/2 inch down, 1.5 inches down from your pocket, and 1.5 inches on your corners. And then we're going to run into that 1.5 inches again in just a little bit with our straps. Okay, so we're going to go in again. Okay, making sure that matches. All right, so that matches up. So now what we're going to do is from that point, we're going to go ahead and mark what I do with my mark. Now take your chalk marker or something that you can see, something that you can see, and mark 1.5 inches in from that point. Okay, and that's going to be your stitching line. Okay. All right, I'm going to do this on this side also. Okay, now I will give you another tip, and let me make sure that this is true, because on my Elna that I had, that I would take with me to the Lydia Project, this was true. I can measure from my needle point, where it goes into the fabric, to the edge of the throat plate or the face plate, whatever you call it, and it will measure 1.5 inches. Okay, so it is the same true with this. So instead of me having to mark it, you do want to pin it, but instead of having to mark it to save time, you can just line it up to the edge of the throat plate. Okay, so you can measure yours and see if it holds true for yours. I don't think it do for all machines, but so far this does. So I am going to line the edge of my point where I mitered my corner. I'm going to line that point up to the edge of the face plate or throat plate. Okay. Going to make sure that my seams are laying flat under there. I'm going to take that pin out once I get over that seam allowance. And then I'm going to keep stitching straight on across and then back stitch. Okay. All right. What this does, once you miter the corners, for those of you that might be making these for the first time, I've never done a mitered corner or a bag, it allows it to be able to stand up. Okay, so you're going to do the same thing on this other side. Okay, now you want to make sure that those seams are lined up even. And you want to make sure that they are on point and straight, because if not, your bag will be crooked and wobbly, and you don't want that. You'll be able to tell the difference. All right, now at this point, some people cut the tails off, cut the ears off. I don't cut mine off on the body part, the bag part, the lining I might, depending on how thick it is. But on the body, I don't. I actually fold it down, and I make sure that it's pulled tight enough that it's not, you know, bagging or puckering under there. I pull that, and I line this up. I don't know if you can see that. I line that up with the seam allowance. I line the point up with the seam allowance. Okay, and then I take and tack that down to the seam. I don't stitch it onto the bag. I stitch it I grab a piece of the seam allowance. My light is glaring too bright. But I just take part of the seam allowance and I tack that down to the seam allowance. Just on one side. And just enough to catch it. You don't have to go across the whole thing, but just enough to catch it. Again, you can actually put your machine on 0 and let it just stitch in place. Okay. So what this does is just give it extra support down there. Alright, so now this bag, the outside is pretty much almost done. It's got to have the straps on, so that's the next thing that we're going to do. Alright, so can you see that nice little clean corner there? That's your nice little corner. Go ahead and push those out. Just give it a little press, finger press. So now this bag can pretty much stand up on its own. Okay, pretty much stand up. All right, so now we want to get those straps on. Okay, once we get the straps on, then we're almost there. We just got to sew the lining up. All right, so what we want to do here, y'all don't have one of those fancy cameras where you can zip back and forth through screens. I ain't that tech savvy yet. All right, so what you want to do here before you do anything is go ahead and mark. Remember I told you we're going to come back to that 1.5 inch again. Since makes it real easy, since your ruler is already set, your marker is already set, we're going to mark 1.5 inches away from the seam allowance. Okay, from the side seam. You want to mark 1.5 inches in from the side seam. And this is where your strap is going to be placed. Okay, so go ahead and take your pen. You can either mark this with the chalk marker or you can mark it with the pen. I usually just stick a pen in there. Okay, you're going to do this in the front. Mark 1.5 inches from the seam, and you're going to do this in the back also. Okay, these are just markers to know where to lay the straps. Okay, 1.5 inches. Now, I don't know if you ladies have a specific way that you like to place your straps, but I like to place my seams towards the inside. The seams of my straps. I like to place them towards the inside. Okay, so this is how your pins are set in. Okay, 1.5 inches in. Okay, so now that the straps are already done, all I have to do is place them. But you have to mark 1.5 inches. You're going to place your straps 1 inch over the edge of the bag. Okay, so you can either go ahead and mark that with your chalk marker, or you can eyeball it. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and mark this. Okay. Go ahead and mark that on both ends of your straps because you're going to have to stitch both ends of your straps. Okay. And I'll show you what that looks like. Okay. All right, so got 1 inch marked. And so now, hey Kim, good evening. Good evening. Color, oh, that was something you said earlier. Yeah, good evening, Miss Kim. All right, so I'm going to place this strap behind the pen, not on the pen. I'm not centering the strap over the pen, but I'm placing it away from the pen on the inside of the pen. Okay, hope that makes sense. And I'm placing it 1 inch above the top edge. Okay, and I'm going to place me a pen horizontally over the strap to secure it in place for when I sew. All right, I'll show you what that looks like when I'm finished. Go ahead and do that on both sides. Get that done, get it out of the way. I tell you, this is a very, very, very simple and easy bag to sew. And if you have a loved one or someone that you know has just been diagnosed with cervical cancer, female, young girl, woman, even an older woman, we have elderly women that are being diagnosed in their late stages in life, 70s, 80s, and they're still being referred to the company. But if you know someone, refer them to the company, call, the number that I'll leave in the description below, give us their information, and they'll send them a tote bag out. So they'll get one of these tote bags that we actually made. All right, we've actually had ladies to write back and send thank you notes via Facebook or writing a note or email them saying that they received the bag that so and so made because the name was on the name card and they were delighted to receive the bag. It put a smile on their face. So they do, it's simple, it's a simple gesture, but it means a lot because it always constantly reminds the bag carrier that the Lydia Project cares. All right, so these are the pins that I placed on the bag first. So that's what I mean by the straps are pinned inside the pins. All right, and then 1 inch above the top edge. Okay, and so the seams of my straps are towards the inside, not towards the outside. So I did that on both sides. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and stitch this across. And I know I could probably do this when I sandwich the bag in, but this gives it extra security. Now, the reason that we give 1 inch over the edge of the fabric, over the edge of the bag, is so that the straps don't easily come out of the bag because we're stitching a 1/2 inch across here. So that gives you a 1/2 inch seam allowance. A lot of times when there's a lot of wear and tear and pull and people put lots of stuff down in the bag, it tends to weaken the seam and it potentially may make the strap come out. But if there's an inch of strap down in there and it's already secured, if that seam comes undone, guess what? There's a less likely chance that strap is going to come out. All right, so I've just taken my plate off of the sewing machine, and so now I am going to stitch the straps in place. I'm going to remove the pin, and I'm making sure that my strap still stays in place. Now you can base this in or stitch it in, it doesn't matter, but this is not the final stitch. You're going to have to stitch over this again when you put the line into the bag. So we are almost there, almost there. I'm just basically tacking the straps down. Okay. This is a good project for your women's organizations at church to do, your social clubs. This is a good project for mommy getaway times. You might have a little group where you get away, been with the kids. You may homeschool, and you just need something to get away. This is a great project for your sewing meetup groups, your sewing clubs, sewing guilds. This is a great project, and it gives back, allows you to give back to your community. Good way to support. All right, so go ahead and clip your threads, clip all those loose threads, because it will get in the way after a while. All right. Make sure all your pins are out. This clear thread, this monofilament thread is awesome to work with. Love it. Like I said, it saves time because I didn't have to change purple thread, then pink, and then white. I didn't have to do that because I'm working with the same color. All right, so now that this is done, I'm going to go ahead and park this and put it aside because that part of the bag is done. We are halfway there. All right, I'm going to put this back on. I'm going to pull my thread out, make sure I don't let that jump out of the needle again. And so now I'm going to go ahead and get the lining done. Okay, now for the lining, I want to make sure you have right sides together. When you have fabric that pretty much look the same, you just have to determine which is right, which is wrong. All right, so I'm going to put one piece aside. Okay, now on the right side of one piece, I'm going to go ahead and fold it wrong sides together, hot dog style. Okay, and I'm going to do my finger pressing again because I want to get that center crease. All right, now what I'm doing right here is I'm getting ready to put the label on, which, yeah, I dropped the label. Hang on. My label flew on the floor. Okay. All right, so what I want to do is sew my label on. Now this time, I am pinning my label, got my crease in place, my center mark. I am marking 2 inches down from the top edge, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and put me a little mark. There's my chalk. 2 inches down from the top edge. Okay. Now I kind of cheat because another tip that I've learned is that by doing this, I learned that the D on the Lydia Project is the center way, the ball on the D. The ball on the D is the center of this label. So I line my D up with the crease that I just put down here, and I make sure that it's laying on that crease, but lined up, the edge of my label is lined up with the marking that I just put there. All right, so then I'll go ahead and I put a pin in the center to hold that in place. Okay, so I'll put that in the center. So what's good about this too is that when you stitch across this label, it's clear, so you don't see it, because you otherwise you'd have to have white to stitch across. Okay, so let's go ahead and get the label in. Make sure it's lined up on the chalk mark that you just put down there. Make sure that's all good, and you're gonna stitch this, edge stitch this. Okay, so far so good. Okay, now you want to try not to stitch on the letters. So if you have to move that needle out and come just stitch right below the letters, that's what you want to do. You don't want to stitch on the letters. So you might have to lift your needle up and kind of manipulate your needle, position your needle over your fabric. Okay, and just pivot, go back up. Okay, all right, that was just that easy. So now the label is in. All right, clip all your threads off. All right, looks good, right? Yay! All right, so let's go ahead and put right sides together, and we're gonna sew the sides of the tote of the lining. We're gonna sew both sides down, and then we're opening. We're gonna leave about a 3-inch opening at the bottom to be able to turn it inside out. Okay, so let's go ahead and stitch that 1/2 inch seam allowance down both sides of the lining. At this point, you start getting antsy because you already know we are almost done. We're almost finished with this program. Can't wait to see how it's going to do. Stitch across that bottom part. Now, you are going to miter the corners on this as well. So you want to make sure you leave enough clearance for that. Okay. Now I'm doing something. I want to make sure I hold on to this tight. Well, actually, let me do what I said for you to do. Stitch from top to bottom, because you don't want to cause it to be. You don't want to cause it to shift. Okay. So I will shift. Uh-oh. Somehow my thread jumped out again. See how curly that thread is? But I haven't had much problem with it. The reason why it jumped out is because I didn't pull enough when I clip my threads. And that's with any project. If you don't pull your tails enough out when you get ready to sew, if your thread is too short coming out of the needle, it's going to jump right out when you start to sew. So make sure you pull enough behind the sewing machine to keep that from happening. So we got that, and we're going to go ahead and clip those corners. The reason why I clip the corners, because when I get ready to miter the corners, it's easy to open up the seams when they're clipped. Okay, so let's go ahead and cut loose that thread that's holding that center open. And okay, now at this point you can go ahead. Now it might be easy if you're one that meticulously like to press your seams and you want to make sure you get down to the very bottom of the seam. Before you stitch the bottom, go ahead and press your seams open and then stitch the bottom. It'll be easier for you that way. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and finger press this really quick. Okay. You've seen me finger press the other part. So I've got that finger pressed. This fabric is very good for that. It's staying in place. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah. This makes a good crease. You see that? Hold that in place really good. All right. Okay. So now we're going to pin this for mitering the corners like we did the last one. So what we do again is make sure that the bottom, see if I have that hole there, we want that hole to stay in there. So I want to make sure the bottom lines up, the bottom seam lines up with the side seam. Okay. And again, we make sure that point, we bring that to a full point. You can kind of feel the seams coming together down there, but you want to make sure that they did come together. So you want to go ahead and take a pin, a straight pin, push it through that seam and push it back through the seam and up through the seam on the opposite side. So it should look like that. That pin, you see that right there is in that seam allowance, and there it is on that side. Okay, so that means that the seams are jammed up together. No mistaking. All right. Again, if they're not together, what's going to happen is you're going to have a wobbly, crooked bag. Okay. So let's do the same thing on this side. Kind of feel that seam in there. They should be pretty much together. Okay, that pin came through that side. And we're going to push it back through opposite side. There we go. See? There we go. In that seam, in the groove. There we go. All right, so now we're going to stitch a again, a 1.5 inch. And remember, I marked my 1.5 inch is matches up from my needle, from the tip of my needle to the edge of the plate. So I don't have to mark it. That saves me time. Just go straight to it. Nothing to it but to do it. Okay, go ahead and put my needle down in there. I'm going to back stitch. Make sure that my seams are not folded up. Once I get a hold to that seam allowance, then I'll go ahead and release that pin. Okay. All right, let's do that on the other side. Put my needle in, back stitch. Go ahead and take that needle, that pin. There's a difference between pin and needles. Some of my students will call my pins, straight pins, needles. So, but there is a difference. All right, so at this point, you can cut these off if you like. You can cut, because this is the lining, so you won't have it too bulky. You can cut this off, which I will trim it back a little bit, because this in there is not going anywhere. All right, so I trimmed it down to probably about 3/8 of an inch. So that means I don't know why that message came back up. All right, so now what we're getting ready to do is we're almost at that point where we're almost done. So I'm getting ready to sandwich my bags together, my lining and my outer shell, the bag part, the body part. Sandwich them together inside, right sides together, and I'm going to stitch around the top edge. Okay, so to make sure that I have them in place, this is the back of my bag with the label. I need for the back of the bag, for the back of the lining, the label side, to be opposite of the header. Okay, so these are going to be sitting in there opposite. So in essence, the back of the outside bag is going to be matched up to the label side. Okay, all right, so I don't know if you can see that, but this is that's the label side. Okay, and this is the back of the bag. All right, and this is the front of the lining bag, and this is the front of the shell of the outer bag. Okay, so now I'm just going to take my, okay, I got the clue. There's some thread attached holding the sides together. Okay, that could create a problem when you're sewing. You don't want to know why you can't release your seams. All right, so we want those seams to be open. So we're going to go ahead and line those up. And we're going to do just like we did with anything else. We're going to make sure that the seams line up just perfect. Okay? And we're going to do that by making sure that pin is lined up in that seam allowance. There we go. I'm going to do that on the opposite side. I thank y'all for hanging in there with me. I promised my So Much Talent group that I would do this and show how I make this bag. I was going to try to do it in 2 parts, but I said, you know what? It's Sunday evening sewing. It's not that long of a video. Well, it's been an hour and a half now. But at least you'll have it and you'll know how to sew it. All right. Besides, I love the company. All right. You can always catch the replay if you can't watch the whole thing. All right, so I'm going to go ahead now and stitch this all the way around. No openings, because there is an opening in the lining, remember? And I'm going to tell you how we bring that out. I'll show you how we do that. We have cute little sayings for stuff like that. All right, so I'm just going to start on one side. It doesn't matter which side. Still 4/8 of an inch seam allowance. Go ahead and put my needle in, and let's get busy. Let's go ahead and close this baby up, and let's make a bag. Now, while I am sewing this, I do make sure that my straps are straight because sometimes they get crooked under there. So I do make sure that my straps are laying straight. Make sure that they're nice and neat. Don't want to sew over your pins. My students, I call them people. I do not want to run over the people. My young students and older students get a kick out of that as well. We get to learn that our sewing machines have body parts, just like the face, hand, arm, toes. You don't want to have a bubble in your seam, so what you want to do is you want to force, if there's a little looseness anywhere, you want to force stitch it and manipulate that fabric so you don't have any wrinkles or creases or anything like that. Okay, so this is what's happening. That got caught in there something. When you sew these bags, it's not about you know, race to see how many bags you can get done. Just take your time and do it right. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, because I see there's a lot more looseness in there than what supposed to be there. And I did not take my foot off, which make it a lot easier. So what I'm going to do, because the bottom feeds faster than the top part, I am going to flip this over and let the bottom try to ease that in. Okay, so I'm going to start from this side. Where I left off at, or where I started off at. And I am going to manipulate this fabric in. So what I'm doing here is making sure that that strap is straight. Come on, get in there. There we go. Yeah, there we go. So that's just a tip. If you find that one side of your fabric, if the top is feeding not as fast as the bottom, and you find that it's starting to, you feel like you're going to get a little tuck or a pleat in there, maybe about an inch of space in there, go ahead and flip it over and let that excess part run through the bottom, because that bottom feeds. And so what it does, kind of eases it in there. So I don't know if you can see that. Just right in there is where it kind of eased it in. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, this is what we call birthing the baby. And we get a kick out of this every time, because literally it's like pulling this whole big bag through this little tiny hole. And it's like Scarlett O'Hara. It reminds me of her every time I do this. She said, I don't know nothing about birthing no baby. So we just reach down in there in that little hole. And I like to grab the handle. So I don't know if this is like, I ain't never birthed no baby, y'all. But I can only imagine. So you just grab the handles. And or the bag, just any part of the bag, and just pull that bag through the hole. Okay. Now I will say that when you sew this bottom part up and you leave the openings, you do want to make sure you secure where you stop and start, so that way it won't split open while you're doing it. You want to make sure that those seams are very secure. Okay. So go ahead and first that bit. See, I just did. I pulled on a little too hard. But we're going to stitch over that anyway, so don't worry about that. If it happens, it's not the end of the world. But you'll save yourself headache if you take care of it beforehand. All right, so see that I didn't show you the nice little mitered corners right there. All right, so now that we have the back flipped in and out, how do we close this up? We're just going to stitch across that, okay? Just going to tuck that in. Finger press that, nice. And then I'm going to go ahead and stitch across the bottom. Okay. Oh, that don't sound good. Something got caught in there. Okay. All right, let's try that one more time. It may be that I need to rethread, so let me see. Something may not be threaded. If you start hearing noise like that, check your threading first. Make sure everything is threaded because something could have come undone. So just stop and take your time. And it seems like this happens right when you're just about to finish, right? Like you're almost done, almost there at the end. For some reason. Almost at the end, and then the thread comes undone. All right, so let's go ahead and get that back in there. Now I will say that when you use this in your bobbin thread, it is a very long time before you have to rewind your bobbin. Yeah, always, always. All right, I'm gonna leave that off because I'm gonna have to stitch up the top part. All right, so I think that should have taken care of that. I'm gonna start from this end so I can get a good grip on that seam. Okay, there we go. Yep, thread had come undone. Now, somebody made a good point one time. If you're one that, if you look down in the bottom of your bag and you don't like to see a seam down there, you can actually leave an opening in the side. Okay, doesn't have to be at the bottom. I'm so used to doing it, but if you're one that you don't like to see your side seams, I mean your seam down at the bottom stitched up, then put it in the side. Leave an opening in the side. All right, so now all you have to do is just push that back in there, push that in, push those corners out, make sure they're neat. Get that tucked in there real nice and neat. Okay. And now the last thing that you have to do is actually make sure that thread is clipped right there. Now all you have to do is top stitch, and then we are done. The last thing you have to do is top stitch. Isn't that wonderful? So now at this point, I'm just going to kind of loosely finger press my bag all the way around. This one get real excited. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm almost done. Yes. Go ahead and, all right, so now we got that finger press. Let's go and close the deal. Yes, I'm so excited. And now here your edge stitching also, okay? Now let's try to make sure that my lining never comes to the top of the bag. I'm going to always make sure that my lining stays to the underside, okay? So as you're stitching, check for that. Okay. Again, if it doesn't, it's not the end of the row. I think you're still going to have one. This bag, it's almost like you never know what you're going to get when you putting this together. It's like delivering a baby. like in labor, and then you come out with this beautiful baby. Oh, outside of just creating the bag, it's a wonderful feeling knowing that you're doing something to give back to somebody else. You know, that you're gonna put a smile on somebody else's face and make them happy. All right, well, that is it. That is the Lydia bag. And I have one last thing to do, and I think I moved my pen out of the way. But I like to sign my card of just saying that I created the tote bag. But you can see this card here. This is my card. I would sign it just like this. I always put my little heart in there. And at the bottom, because this is So Much Talent Sewing Group, I just put my first name here. I don't put my full name. And I put So Much Talent down at the bottom. And I go ahead and stick my card right down in the bag. All right. And then that's it. It's ready to go back to the Lydia Project. And we just generally, if you want, give it one last little press, you know, steam it or whatever the case may be. If you haven't done it while you were stitching it, go ahead. I like to fold it down like this. Just fold the ends up. I'm going to put this up. Yeah, go ahead and just fold the ends up like this. Fold that, and then I'll just tuck it back in the bag, the plastic bag that it came in, and just ship it right back to the Lydia Project. Okay, just put it right back in the bag. But that's it. So now I have 2 bags to take back with me when I go back next month. Oh, don't forget to clip all of your threads. There may be some lingering around. Make sure you check really good. Make sure your stitches are good. Make sure that there's nothing, no seams that have come undone. There's another thread. They'll go back and check too, because we have checkers that go behind us. So there's a Lydia bag. Faith. The seams are nice and perfect and matched up. Love it. The corners are nice and mitered. So I love it. So I have a faith bag and a love bag. So maybe the next one I pull out will be a hope bag. I know, right? Isn't that cute? I love the little dots. I have never seen one come through like that. But isn't that cute? Love it. Well, that's the end of making of the Lydia Project tote bag. I enjoyed making that one. It was a lot of fun. You know, generally, if you are, I know they are, and you can get it fast, but of course, I'm talking and stopping and showing. But when you're moving and working, you literally can get these done. It might take you about 45 minutes to an hour to do one bag. Because all the pieces are already cut. So all you're doing is just putting them together. All right. So yeah. So if you're ever interested in becoming a Lydia Project volunteer, and thanks Kim, thanks Natalie. If you're ever interested in volunteer with the Lydia Project, it costs you nothing but time, and maybe a stamp or two, you know, to get the bags to mail back to the Lydia Project. But outside of that, they ship them to you. They pre-cut. They send you the instructions, and you're being a blessing. All right. So that's it. If you have questions, leave them down in the comment below. If you're not following me, go ahead and follow. I won't talk about you. Go ahead and follow and hit that little bell to get the notifications. I will try to do more videos. I'm not going to say how often I'll do them. Hopefully, I won't be as long. Thank you so much, Auntie Carrie. Hopefully, it won't be as long as this one. But I want to do more of like bridal type stuff, alterations, things like that, because that's technically that's what I do. I'm an alterations um, expert alterationist and bridal gown designer, maker, however you want to call it. So I want to talk more about those type things. Um, so hopefully my videos will be a little bit shorter, but they'll be informational, no doubt. All right. So if you have questions, again, just leave them in the comments below. But thank you so much for watching. Those of you that will watch this later, thank you so much. I appreciate you. If you ever want to be a part and join us where the fun is, we're over in the So Much Talent group. It is So Much Talent on Facebook. So Much Talent parentheses GR. I say that because there's two. There's a So Much Talent page, which is very active. All of my posts from Instagram all of those that go over into that page. So anybody from the outside, the So Much Talent group is a closed group, but we have so much fun in that group. So come be a part. All right. Well, love you to life, and remember, you are blessed to be a blessing. Again, thank you, and you have a good evening.